Well, hello there. You're seeing our lovely faces for, I think, the second time, Gene. And we live in
When was the first
Alaska.
time? When
Well,
was
no,
the
because
first?
we did When Evil Lurks. Remember, we had director Scott Eggleston, as you can see, is back with us
Right
today.
there.
We had his son on with us, who was calling from, like, I don't even know, Vietnam or somewhere.
Washington.
Washington. Okay, close enough. So
Yeah,
we
they
had to do
they
it.
both
We had to
struggled.
Yeah, we did it over Zoom then. So this will be the second time. So hopefully we can do a good episode today. But the reason, of course, we're liars. Everybody who watches this know
Oh,
that
I
we,
have to say, guys, I did prep for this review, and actually, we have a guest, the actual star of the show. Her name is Asling. I can't even say her name, but Franciscoy. I can't. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it right. But she's an Irish actor, and she has an interesting quote. So I thought we'd play her
Oh,
quote.
okay,
Yeah.
go
wow.
ahead,
So
Gene.
It's a multimedia
she's like a
presentation.
guest.
A special guest that'll probably sue us now for improper use of her image.
Well, this is YouTube. I don't think so.
But yeah, we were supposed to talk about Samara Weaving's The Babysitter today,
Which I
and
watched actually.
of course, we're liars. We're not going to talk about that today because Scott
We will get to
text.
the babysitter.
Yeah, we'll get to that one next week. But Scott texted me saying, "Hey, have you guys heard about this movie called Stop Motion that's going to be playing for like 1 week only or whatever?" We had a very pleasant experience in the theater last night. It was me, Gene, and Scott, and two kids down in the very front row that weren't that concerned about the film. And so we're going to
They made
talk
a lot of
about
special effects
they did,
during the
yes.
bloody parts, and there was lots of blood.
So let's jump right in. Now, I'm going to give you a spoiler warning. I don't normally do that, but this thing's playing at the theater right now. So if you don't want to have it all spoiled for you, go watch the movie and then come back and watch this. But Gene, where are you at with stop motion?
Oh, stop motion. I just have to say this, Scott, thanks for referring this movie. So I love this movie. It's great. It's what horror's all about. So if you like horror, you've got to see it. It's manipulation of the human form. It's like examination of our own choices. Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Oh yeah, checks all the boxes. So it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Yeah.
Right, and the basic premise is there's this stop motion animator, and she is working with her mother. Her mother is a very famous, well-respected stop motion animator. The mother has had like arthritis or something in her hands, so she can no longer manipulate the pieces. The mother is very domineering. The mother ends up in the hospital, and the daughter decides to continue her work, but then kind of runs into a different pathway to create a different movie, and terrible things happen after that. Scott, where are you at with it?
I thought this movie was very effective. Definitely ticked all the boxes for me as far as effective horror movie. For example, I mean, it definitely had atmosphere. The characters were all believable and sympathetic. It showed us something that I hadn't really seen before. I mean, it feels kind of like a derivative of a creepy doll movie, but it did it in kind of a new way, which was pretty interesting. And also, I also had a lot of respect for it because it clearly, like, I didn't know the filmmaker beforehand, but he clearly understands stop motion. Like, the stop motion stuff was all really good. I mean, it wasn't like
Oh,
Mhm.
it's great. It's
wasn't like,
great.
oh, I'll just write a movie about stop motion animators and I'll fake my way through it because. And then afterwards, I looked him up, and he does have quite a list of stop motion shorts that are all creepy looking.
Right.
But this this definitely is not a feel good movie or a fun horror movie. I mean, it definitely focuses in on the dread element, and as it goes into
Scott.
this spiral into insanity for this character. But
Yes,
it
yes.
was effective, for sure.
Hey, Scott, a quick question. Yes, I agree. Spiral into depths. Yep. But hey, did you see those shorts called Meat Love? In, in looking up this film, because it looks like the guy who made this had some influences. This guy named Jan Stanking Fire made this.
Swanamaker.
Yeah, made this short. It's like a minute long called Meat Love. And I could see if you watch this, you can see the influence of maybe that short on this movie. because there's some interesting parts with
I
meat.
haven't seen that,
This,
but Robert Morgan, the director, like I said, I looked him up on IMDb, and he must have like 15 to 20
yeah,
short
yeah,
films that are all disturbing, images of, all kinds of stuff. I'm kind of curious to see some of his shorts, but he clearly transitioned well. This is a well-written screenplay, well acted. The effects were on point. Yeah, it was effective. Like I said, it's not one of those movies I think I'll revisit a lot because it's just dark. I mean, you go right into the darkness and plunge deep, and but it kind of reminded me also of movies like, Hereditary or Carrie, where you have these kind of tragic stories about characters that are dominated by their parents in some way, and the parents are not good influences. Let's just say that.
yes,
Right.
yeah. A
Right.
line.
Well, Gene, I really like the fact that you brought up Jean Swanamaker
Thanks for
because
pronouncing his name better.
this is a film clearly influenced by that person's style. There's a great movie that he did quite a long time ago, maybe 1982. That as I was watching this, I was like, oh, the director clearly was a fan of that person because, of course, the stop motion dolls are all super creepy and it's
Right.
not, you've got your like Davy and Goliath stop motion stuff where it's all happy and fun and everybody looks good. And this one is, no, everything is decayed and nasty. And of course, one of the key plot points here is she's actually creating the stop motion dolls out of pieces of meat and roadkill and things like
Yes.
that.
Good
And so
plot.
definitely influenced by that film, that filmmaker. I believe the film was called, it was an Alice in Wonderland thing, but it's super creepy and super cool. So definitely check that one out if you're into creepy stop motion for sure.
Yeah, definitely look up Meat Love. It'll blow your mind for sure. But hey, one of the lines from this movie that really caught me is they said stop motion, which it kind of, even the word stop motion is kind of like telling for this movie. Because at the beginning of this movie, there's this strobe effect, where you
Hmm.
see like good and dark of the same person. And I think this movie explores that. Then the line and the quote that kind of got me from this movie was where they say the quote unquote stop motion is the art of making dead things come to life. I
Right.
think that's like the theme of this movie because I think the protagonist is Ella Ansling Friosi, I think is how you say her name, is that I think she feels dead inside. It's like she doesn't have creativity. Like her mother calls her as a nickname, Puppet, which is clearly a reference to Puppet.
Mhm.
She feels she doesn't have anything on the inside, like maybe she's dead. And, she
Mm.
has to look, she finds this little girl, right? And this little girl gives her inspiration. So, but I think that's a strong theme there is that's, it's like, what do we have inside of ourselves? Like, do we have confidence in ourselves? Even in this girl, she feels dead inside. And I think it's the genesis of her, her eventual downfall.
Correct, Gene. You nailed it perfectly. I I do like the fact that the only way she ends up actually getting inspiration is from someone else. So she has completely lost her creativity because of that oppression of the mother. There's a great scene early on where she's screaming at the person, 2 millimeters, move it 2 millimeters, two
Yeah, yeah.
millimeters, and and then there's that other scene where she's like, just keep your hands on it. Don't move, don't move. And so she's really using her as just a puppet, like you said, and has siphoned away any potential creativity she would have had. And then she finds it basically from some other girl who's telling her the whole story. Here's what I need you to do. And she's once again just a puppet for this little girl, who's my
Right.
favorite character, by the way.
Creepy kid trope. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like Gene. You brought up that one of those opening shots. Well, the very first opening shot is that egg thing, right?
Egg thing, yeah.
Which appears periodically. It was kind of an interesting visual, but then it cuts to her. As you said, that strobe looks like she's in a club or something. And
Right.
interestingly, like she's wearing a dress that you never see again. Like you never see her in that specific outfit in that specific place with all the strobing. Where I thought it was a really cool shot because you think that they're like switching faces on you, but you can't really tell
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
so
so rapid
fast.
fire. And it definitely plays into the whole stop motion thing because stop motion is the art of moving one frame at a time, and that whole sequence was very kind of mesmerizing about how, obviously it could be trigger an epileptic seizure also. So
Right.
Yes,
be aware, if you go to this movie.
yeah, seizure warning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this. This movie has many characters in it, but really this movie is just driven by the main character, Ella, again, Ansling. But I like in this clip, I think I'll play it right now, this clip, is that she talks about independent films. And I thought, Scott, you would like this. You're an independent filmmaker yourself. Because I thought really this whole movie is really about her. And she's talking about like emotion. So is that okay? So this is
Go for it.
our guest here. All right. The interview.
Told on screen before,
Can you hear that?
cinema, I guess, like
Yeah.
highlighting different aspects of our lives and hopefully
Sure.
promoting change. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important, and I genuinely think it happens more often in independent cinema than not. It's where people explore these very human instincts that we have and the effects they have on the society. And I think, yes, of course, there are much bigger studio films that can do that too, but there's something very, when you have to pair it back with an independent film to like really the story and emotion, that's the only thing that matters. I think that they can be very powerful, partly for that reason. Yeah. And do you know what you're going to be working on next?
So I like that clip a lot where she talks about independent films and where you have to pare it back to this. It's just the story and emotion. And to me, that's what this movie is. It's all emotion. It's all her story, and it's just pure emotion as she just her descent and her fall, and she just is trying so hard to figure it all out. And she doesn't, yeah. So to me, that is like story and emotion, you know?
It's interesting too because I've often said, I think I've probably said it on your show before, is that as an independent filmmaker, like I'm looking to do stories that Hollywood won't touch because that's the only way I can really kind of compete with Hollywood. And this movie definitely, I think, falls into that category. I can't see this being a big Hollywood movie.
Right.
It can really only be told in an independent way. Uh, but it's also, as a filmmaker watching this movie, you can definitely relate to her plight, right? Because you go through things like writer's block and imposter syndrome, and all that plays in here. The idea of losing control of your creation, or like at one point she says, "Well, I don't want to keep doing it, but I don't want to stop either." I mean, it's this
Yeah,
weird kind
yeah.
of push pull thing that she's going through. And the story of an artist going crazy, getting into their creation or just trying to live up to their potential or whatever as they, descend into madness is not an uncommon theme.
Right.
Yeah.
Even Herschel Gordon Lewis did one of those. So
Or like Jackson Pollock, or any famous artist, the line between genius and insanity is really thin. And so it's a common theme I think any artist can relate to. I think as they get wrapped up in trying to prove themselves as an artist. It's
I think Stanley Kubrick kind of explored that in a
Oh
certain
yeah, he
film.
was nuts, right?
Dean, we are not talking about Kubrick again.
Okay.
I
All
mean,
right. That's
if we wanted to talk about some other directors, though, this movie has a very strong David Cronenberg vibe going through it as far as the body horror aspect, because she is creating these little puppets out of meat and even human flesh at one point.
her
Um,
own flesh. Yes.
right. And then, well, and of course, that goes in with the great line in there where um, in all art, what is it? A piece of the artist is in all of their creations and things like that. But also there's some David Lynch action going on here too, early David Lynch, where okay, everything's kind of confusing and what's real, what's not real. Is the little girl real? Obviously, the girl's not. That's a complete hallucination.
I love how you said that. You're making me think of Mulholland Drive right now.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so I like how, Scott says this is not a movie he would revisit. I'm certainly going to do that when it comes out on streaming, because there's a lot more going on that I missed. Normally, I like to watch these movies twice before we do the show. Obviously, we just saw it last night, one time, but it's the type of movie where I believe if you watch it again and probably again, you're going to see things that this director did that you didn't catch the first time and kind of how it all fits in. And that's kind of the genius of some of these lower budget independent films is here's a director that is completely allowed to show his or her vision on screen without any interference. And I applaud that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is great stuff.
Because when Disney decides to remake this in a decade, it's not going to be as good.
No, definitely not.
I think a lot of credit too should obviously go to that actress, Ainsley. Is that her name? I can't remember. She's Irish.
Yeah,
It's an Irish
Aisling,
name.
I was just Irish.
Ainsley.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I saw an interview once with Tony Collette talking about Hereditary and how she really didn't want to do a horror movie because it's so emotionally draining. It just clobbers you. But it was such a good script that she did it anyway. And you can kind of see as I was watching this. I mean, I was kind of thinking about that as well as the emotional toll that a movie like this can take on an actor. But I mean, that's why they're there. Obviously, I mean that's what they want to do. And she's very good at playing this sort of depleted woman who I like what you said, how I think Roger, you said it, how she's empty inside, she has no creativity of her own. At the beginning, when her mom says, she says, well, I've got my own ideas, and her mom says, well, what are they? And she can't respond. She's either too intimidated by her mother or she doesn't have any. I think it's probably a combination of both.
she's just
Although,
quiet, right?
as you point out later, the little girl becomes her muse. And then when, she won't do the little girl's bidding, the little girl says, well, I just want to tell you what happens next. And then she says, well, I don't care. And then she tries to go forward and she can't,
Right.
so she needs that her, which we can maybe, talk about who the little girl is, what she represents. Cause that's a really, like Roger said, that was her favorite character and she's very compelling and interesting. And as you say, I mean, they kind of tease you with the fact that, okay, first of all, because you first think, well, where's her parents? What
Right,
parents are
right.
gonna let this little girl wander into somebody's apartment and hang out with them? And then you start to suspect that maybe she's not real. And then the movie tells you she's not real.
Oh, yes, she's not real. Yes.
So,
Well, and if, my interpretation of that little girl at the end of the day is that that little girl was representing the main character when she still had creativity and things like that before whatever happened in her life, the ongoing trauma or what have you, that siphoned all of that away. And so that's kind of my interpretation of that little girl. But the little girl could also just be the devil, who knows, right?
well, I kind of saw her as also being maybe a projection of her mother, because her mother was the one with the creativity. Mother was the one bossing her around, and the girl turns into that sort of representation. Plus, we get from the beginning that she's the daughter is supposed to be helping her mother complete her last film, right? And then at the end, they're watching the film together, and the little girl says, "Oh, it's perfect." At which point, the daughter basically retires herself, right, or goes back into the box, which makes me think this whole movie is a movie within a movie within a movie, perhaps, because
Yeah.
that I don't know. The movie to me seemed to be telling us that the daughter was herself an animatronic puppet, because
Yeah.
she has those hallucinations, or maybe not, where she's pulling mortician's wax off of her body.
Yeah, of her own
um,
face. Yeah.
yeah, and then at the end, her mother had that conversation with her about, well, you don't know how to control things, and you have to know how to put these things away in their box when you're done with them. And then the daughter actually does that at the end. She goes into her box and shuts the lid, like she was a character the whole time.
Yeah.
Because the persona that we thought was real was on this movie that they're watching at the end. Her and the little girl are watching it, and she's all restored and nice, like she'd been, fixed back up and put away for a different project or something. That's kind of what I understood the whole thing to be. Was it's from the very beginning she's being manipulated as an actual puppet, not just a metaphorical one.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of this movie is that it's ambiguous. So yeah, 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 I could come up with something different. And I think all three of us are correct, So
Yeah, but
Well,
not frustratingly ambiguous,
true.
right?
no,
Yeah.
yeah, it's true, true, true. Yes,
Yeah, it
yes.
gives you enough. And then there's that egg thing. The very first image of the movie is this egg, which made me think of the Alien trailer, from
Yes,
1979.
yes.
Right.
I was
It's just
thinking
kind of
Alien,
floating.
yes.
floating in space there, and then it goes back to that a couple times, and then at one point it finally cracks open, right? Again, like the Alien trailer, like it's some kind of birth or rebirth, um, which I thought was also, the one scene where the Ash Man comes in and coughs up that ball, and then puts
I
it in
thought
her.
that was the egg,
Yeah, I agree. I
and then she
agree.
eats it.
Right, she swallows it, which was an interesting scene because they talk about the second night the Ashman's going to come and touch you. That's what he's going to do. And so you're thinking sexual assault, right? That's what you're thinking is going to happen. And is that what happened? I mean, was that some form of insemination or something? The egg in the mouth?
Interesting.
Could be, Scott.
Again,
Again.
it's
You know,
ambiguous enough that yeah, that could be.
maybe
It
we're
could-
actually watching a new Alien movie, Ridley Scott, right? Who knows? But I did like
Yeah,
also the confusion of what's real and what's not, because I like the sequence where she goes into the nightclub, finds her quote unquote friend to get some drugs, some hallucinogenics, and then there's this 3-minute sequence where you believe she is hallucinating pretty severely,
right.
and then you discover later that she didn't actually take the
Oh,
drug.
Right.
that's just her. Yes.
Yeah, that was a
Mhm.
that was a great sequence.
Yeah, if you have problems with creepy clowns, you're not going to want to watch
Yeah,
that
Yeah, that
part.
that huge
yeah. The
ventriloquist
nightclub
dummy
scenes.
on the wall, yeah, was not that was very effective.
Yeah. What the hell kind of nightclub is that?
Yeah. Well, and then there's that girl that walks past her with the painted on eyes that are really big, which
Hmm.
is disturbing. And then the little girl's in there too, which is one of the early tip-offs that she's not real because again, why would she be there? The club wouldn't even let a kid that young into a place like that.
Right, right. There are lots of clues that the girl is not real for sure.
Oh yeah, right away.
Yeah, and reading some stuff about the movie, I guess they filmed the whole thing in just 25 days, and you can kind of see that is that this real simple sets, like that club, kind of looked like it was like somebody's house.
Yeah, could have
It was
been.
really small, really intimate, really closed in. And then she gets like an apartment, to do her work, and that is all clearly it's a set, but it's just a really simple set. Set piece, and they had
Yeah.
some
And,
hallways and
and
stairs, and there you go.
And it's interesting you bring up the production design too, which production designers are very unheralded. They are often overlooked for their work. But here's a great example. Of like, it's almost like there's a set within a set within a set, right? I mean, you've got the
Right,
movie set, and then the
very good.
apartment, and then you've got the little set they build for the stop motion movie they're
Stop
making,
motion.
which mimics where she is, right? Like the little red box, that the woman is being attacked in. Aren't her walls also red? Like, I couldn't remember like if her mom's studio was red. I couldn't remember at the beginning if it was, but because it appears that at the end of the movie they've returned to the mom's studio. I couldn't quite remember what it looked like, but
See, and this is why I'm saying this is a movie
yeah.
where you should watch more than
Read it.
once, because you're
Watch
No,
it
gonna,
you're right.
twice.
You're right. It's
yeah.
just it's just like a it's just a dark rabbit hole to go down, but
Yeah, I love that the multiple sets because there's the set where the stop motion's happening. It's the set where Ella lives, and I love that sometimes they blend them because there's one
oh
time
yeah,
where Ella's on her bed,
yeah,
and
they
the
did a really good
little
job.
girl
Like
comes walking into her bedroom.
right, yeah, that blurring of the real and the unreal was really good. It was really interesting how they. Plus, did you notice that the puppets got bigger too? They kept growing.
Yes, yes.
Oh, right. My favorite at the end is when they were, kind of normal sized puppets, and that one starts to move. I'm like, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah, I also thought it was an interesting comparison because at the beginning, right, her mom's movie was this little movie about these Cyclops, a pair of Cyclops people, right? That were
Right,
dressed similarly. I guess they were blacksmiths or something.
right.
And
Yeah,
Hmm.
one was either like burying the other, or one was dead on the ground, I think, and the other one
Well,
was.
no, the point of that thing, and it fits in with this movie, is the Cyclops had, because the Cyclops only has one eye, the other eye was removed from the Cyclops so that they could see into the future. And the only future that Cyclops saw was her own death, which is she was looking at her own death there.
I think I missed that, but yeah, that's a
Again, watch it more than once,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
yeah. They explained that Cyclops feature,
Yeah.
which they ran it, and I was impressed by that Cyclops feature. They directed it pretty well.
Well, again, I
Mhm.
mean, watching that, it was like, oh, this is clearly made by people who understand stop motion because it was so
Yes.
good. And then looking at his credits, you see, oh, he's had like 15 movies to practice on, before he got to this point.
Well, and you wonder how long it took him to do all that stop motion because it's not the movie kind of cheats a tiny bit with, she starts to do a scene and then, oh, a little bit later it's done. And that's not really how stop motion
Right.
works.
Right. It's less
Long
time.
time.
Yeah.
But the stop motion effects in this were just amazing. It's always refreshing. I think, Gene, the last stop motion movie we even talked about was Coraline. And just the introduction of stop motion into films, especially when it's a primary piece like this is, just sets a different tone for the whole film. In this case, it's super creepy, but even a film like Coraline, which is not necessarily designed to be completely horrifying, um, is that just because of the designs of the stop motions, the movements of them. Your brain is like, okay, this looks good, but it's not real. And so I'm having this internal struggle with, okay, this is kind of creepy. And this guy, yeah, like Scott said, 15 movies to practice on. And it shows because the stop motion is blended seamlessly. Like Gene, you were talking about the part where the little stop motion creature comes up onto the bed. That was awesome. That was Ray Harryhausen level of stop motion integration into live action. It was awesome.
It's good stuff, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then the little creature goes up onto the bed and opens up her leg. Right.
Right.
That one's pretty
Little
good.
little Videodrome action going on there. Let's open you
Oh
up,
yeah, yeah. There you go. There you
you
go.
know.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
later,
So
when
I'm
she,
sorry.
oh, it's fine. Later, she's pulling her stitches out. That was probably the most harrowing scene for me. I mean, yes, it gets more gory, but just the fact that she's like chomping on a cable not to bite her tongue off, and pulling her stitches out was, and then, little girl's just sitting there.
Well, and I think for horror film fans, right, that scene was beautiful. I loved that because it was just, oh my God, you're just going so over the top right now. And yeah, just horror film fans will definitely like this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the little interview that I showed is this the when she talks about, where you have to pare a movie down. I thought of that scene actually when I was just talking about it's just the story and emotion, that's just her being super emotional. She just so determined she had to do it, even if it caused her intense pain. She just had to cut those stitches and get that piece of meat and add it to her set. Just had to do it. Yeah.
The
Even though it,
sacrifices artists make, right?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, the whole theme of self control or lack of it, I thought was interesting when she's that one scene where she's sitting with her mom in the hospital and she's like animating her mom with her phone. She's taking a picture
Yes.
of her mom's arm
Yeah.
and animating it.
Well, and that was right during the whole sequence where the mom was telling her about bringing life to dead things, and that
Yeah.
fit so perfectly with that, and that's yet again another great scene in a movie with lots of great scenes like that.
Yeah, yeah. Again, that line, the art of making dead things come to life. And clearly by that time the mom was virtually dead and
Hmm.
she dies shortly after that. Yeah.
Yep, for sure, for sure. But the acting is all good in this. There's really only the mom and then the main character, the little girl, and then a boyfriend, and was that a sister or something? I don't even know who
Yeah.
that other
Boyfriend,
person
sister.
was. Boyfriend, sister. Yeah, so it's a real tight
Yeah.
knit cast. And
And going over the credits, it's like interesting because independent films, it seems like there's like a web of connections. Because this actress, Aisling, she starred in a 2016 movie called The Nightingale. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that movie is like this. It's super emotional, deals with some really heavy topics, about the oppression of the Aboriginal people in Australia and Tasmania. That's awesome. It's on Hulu now. But that was directed by Jennifer Kent, who also did the Babadook.
Yes.
So you got these web of connections going on.
well, and it's interesting, Gene, you bring up Babadook because Scott's thinking we should do that for episode 75.
Good
Well,
one.
Well, there you go. So we have a connection. This movie is connected to Babadook through the actress Abigail Asling.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
great. So, Scott, anything more to talk about with this one?
I'll just reiterate that it's a good movie. I mean, it's a very effective horror movie. It's a very tragic horror movie. I mean, me personally, like as a viewer and as a filmmaker, I always like stories the best where the main character at least has some kind of small victory at the end, even if they don't win the war. You know, this is not that movie. It's definitely got all those tragic elements. Like I said, I kind of compare it to Carrie, you know, where you've got a really kind of an innocent character that is oppressed by her mother, you know, who's kind of driven to madness, and all kinds of bad things happen to her that aren't really. Although in this movie, I mean, she does make a lot of her own choices, you know, where in Carrie that she was more of a victim, I think. I think that's the case here, but you know, and you also have the innocent characters that also die, don't deserve to die, but they die. So that's when I say, you know, I don't feel like revisiting it. That's what I mean. But I do understand and agree with you that it is a movie that bears repeated viewing because there is a lot going on here,
Yes.
and a lot to decipher. And because obviously they spent a lot of time and care in working those things in. It wasn't just a superficial slasher movie. I mean, this is made with intelligence and love. So
Yeah.
Well, now,
Well,
Scott, there's plenty of slasher movies that are made with intelligence and love. Don't be knocking the slashers.
yeah. Yeah.
Gene,
If you
any
like,
what
I was
else you
just going
got,
to say,
Gene?
if you like horror movies, you definitely, I think we've said this before about other movies, but this is definitely a great movie. If you're a horror fan, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and I would say do this filmmaker a favor by going and catching it at the theater because it is just out for a limited run and then it'll be on streaming or whatever. But these are the types of movies that we as horror film fans and just humans in general should be supporting so we don't keep getting inundated with just Hollywood crap. This, like I said earlier, is a film that a director had an idea and executed that idea. And there, to the best of my knowledge, was nobody telling this director, no, you can't do that, or you have to do this. He just said, here's my movie and release it if you want. But that's my movie. And he did a great job. And I can't recommend a film higher. So definitely
Okay.
check it out. Definitely check it out. But Gene, are we moving on to the babysitter next week now? Are we getting back on the Samara Weaving train?
Well, we could, although we could get on the Asling friends friend CO train as well because she has other horror movies as well.
Yeah, I don't think we should,
But
Gene, until you figure out how to pronounce her name.
yeah, that's probably true. That last name's killing me, dude. Yeah. Let's do the babysitter. We're babysitter time next week.
Okay, we'll jump back onto our Samara Weaving. So we'll do Babysitter next week. Then we'll do Mayhem, which is
Yeah.
also hers. And then would that get us? So then we could do the Babadook after that, because that would be episode 75. Scott, would you be able to join us for that?
yeah, I'd love to.
Cool. And of course, Scott Eggleston is the director of Bad Bones, which is a film we talked about in episode 14, I think. Spoil the
Yeah,
heck out of that movie.
like years
So
ago.
yeah, so definitely if you want another independent horror film that's really good, check out that one. I think it's still streaming on Amazon or other places.
Everywhere.
Uh, Pay this man his money and watch his movie and let us know what you think of that one. So we will catch you next week, Scott. Thanks. It's always just amazing to have you on. I just love your
Yes.
insight.
Oh, thank you.
And
Glad
Gene,
to be here.
I'm loving your hat today.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's yeah, we're based in Anchorage and it's snowing right now. Yeah. So
Yes,
thank
that's why we're doing it on this because it's too much snow. So, all right, we will catch you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.
All right.